Hi, I'm Lyric and I'm here to talk about accessibility at Pride.
Hello, my name is Oliver and I am a trans guy who makes videos about LGBTQIA+ people where they get to talk about anything that they want that somehow relates to them being queer. In September, I went to Malta to visit Europride with my fellow board members of the European Forum of LGBTI+ Christian groups. While there, I also took the opportunity to meet up with some local queers.
I'm Lyric, also known as the Maltese Autist online. I'm a Maltese neuroqueer, so queer and neurodivergent. I'm autistic and I also have a chronic illness. I have more than one chronic illnesses. I have endometriosis and fibromyalgia.
This is how Lyric identifies.
So usually I do simplify it to queer, but I am non-binary. I use they, them pronouns. I am also demiaroace and I am also a lesbian. So there's a lot.
They have chosen a very important subject for this video.
Something I think isn't talked about nearly enough is accessibility at Pride. Pride is this huge celebration which is trying to celebrate all kinds of people, right? Because Pride is about diversity. But sometimes the community tends to sort of ignore certain identities. This can be either within the community or other minority identities, namely the disabled community. So going from the physical disability and chronic illness perspective, usually there's a long Pride march, right? That's the big event. That's the saying, we're here and we're not going to, it's reminiscent of the protests, right? It's just a bit more peaceful, usually. At least here in Malta, it's peaceful.
But for many people, it's difficult or even impossible to participate in the parade.
Obviously, it's a long walk and not many people have the endurance for that. So I do think there should be some adjustments in place to actually help these people attend, because it is important for every type of queer person to be visible, right? Whether they be black or able-bodied or disabled, everyone should be there basically. And one of the ways that I think they could do this is have checkpoints throughout the march. So little tents with chairs and water, medics if they need, if they have enough people. Obviously they do have medics, but it'll be better if, there's these checkpoints, these rest points basically. Another thing I think could be having a float specifically for disabled people. It would be lovely to be in the heart of the celebration, but in an accessible way. This can either be through invite or first come, first serve, or both. I think that could be really neat because you're on a float, you're sitting down, maybe some shade, because Malta is very sunny and very hot. There's also the mental illness side of things, or even chronic illness. A lot of medications make you more susceptible to heat, sunlight, and exhaustion from heat, etc. Can make you more prone to fainting basically, or having heat stroke, which is worse. So having these checkpoints would definitely help these people as well. It's not just one group of people. It helps even the people who are not disabled. Some people just need to rest, especially our older queers, which we love dearly.
Unfortunately, something happened to Lyric during the parade, which happened the day before we were filming this video.
I was really looking forward to the march. However, I had been out and about the whole week beforehand, so my body was already pretty tired. So I was going through a little bit of a fibromyalgia flare-up. I still am. So usually what I do when I have a fibro flare is not only do I take my medication extremely regularly, hydrate, eat whatever, I also carry around a walking stick. However, I saw on one of their posts online a list of prohibited items at Pride, one of them being walking sticks. So I thought, okay, I don't want to cause any trouble, I'll leave it in my car. Famous last words. I got maybe a quarter way through the march and I hit the floor, I fainted. I was feeling very dizzy for a long while. I thought if I could just keep pushing, I'll manage it, but unfortunately I could not. I couldn't really find any places to stop or rest. I couldn't find anywhere to buy water. So I ended up fainting. Medics came, thankfully. They were lovely. They helped me out straight away. They gave me some a really disgusting tasting electrolyte water. It had to be orange flavored of all things. But no, I'm thankful for that. I was also quite non-verbal at the time. I was also pretty overstimulated. So at one point I started actually freaking out a bit because of the tests. Like I had to take my blood sugar, and that's a prick, and all the blood pressure. And my friends had to actually explain, they're autistic, could you maybe do one test at a time? Them stimming is normal, that's just, you know, them trying to regulate themselves. I was actually wearing my sunflower lanyard, which indicates an invisible disability, so preferably they would actually be trained in this sort of thing.
After the march, there was a huge concert.
And then afterwards, I had the concert. I actually sat out the rest of the march. I went and sat in a restaurant where there was air conditioning, got some salt, felt a little bit better after that. It's not 100% though. So my friends and I said, okay, we'll wait outside the concert because we're not sure what the state of it is, because we couldn't really find information online regarding accessibility, though we did see the accessible entrance. And when we checked, it was a bit of an issue because I would have been allowed in with one person, so I would have effectively been separated from all my friends. So I decided, you know what, let me try and see if I can find a compromise here. I told them I'm going to go through the other entrance with my friends, and then if need be, can I just be let into the accessible area? And they said sure, so that was great. I ended up sitting on the floor a couple of times for the concert due to the fatigue. I just wish there was more information online regarding the accessibility options, as well as maybe like a compromise so that you're not essentially segregating disabled from non-disabled attendees.
But there are other forms of disabilities that also have to be catered for.
Going from the neurodiversity side of things, Pride is very loud. We love it being loud. It needs to be loud because it shows that we're here and we're not going to be quiet. We're gonna keep being us, which is great. But not everyone can handle that all the time. So I think the number one thing we could do is not only encourage use of sensory aids like loops or ear defenders, whatever they have, but also have things like structural things to actually help, like actual things in the general area that Pride is being held. So for example, a quiet space.
Who is a quiet space for?
Most of the time people say quiet spaces are mostly for autistic people. Like, it's true, they help autistic people, but it also helps everyone, first of all. Like, once again, these sort of accessibility implementations help everyone, not just disabled people, and that's why, well, we should be investing because disabled people deserve accommodations, but also it helps to tell people that it actually helps everyone, you know? But these quiet spaces can also be used by other neurodivergent people, like people with ADHD can also suffer from overstimulation, and people who have panic attacks and all these kinds of things, because Pride can be kind of triggering when it comes to overstimulation, whether that be auditory or even visual, you know? Because there is a lot of crowds, there's a lot of colors, and we love that, but it can be too much at times.
And there was supposed to be a quiet space during Europride.
I heard word that there was going to be a quiet space at Pride, which would have been excellent. I would have loved a quiet space at Pride. It's something I've wanted for quite some time now. However, not many people knew about it, like through the organizers' side of things. I actually went to the info point and they had to grab a manager to explain. And one of the issues was it was right near a stage. It was a tent, so there was no soundproofing, and there were no fidgets or ear defenders available to actually mitigate this. Unfortunately, it was also where the panels were taking place, so it was unavailable for the large majority of the day. And obviously, nobody chooses when they want to have a meltdown. I'm sure if they could choose, they would rather not have meltdowns, but it just wasn't available for the majority of the time. So unfortunately, there was no true quiet area. It could have been organized a bit better, and I hope they do take this as a learning experience for next year, because it's not just about complaining and getting your voice heard, but it's also about including disabled voices in the conversation and actually seeing what we would need. That's why I'm very outspoken about this.
Lyric is outspoken and does activism in different forms.
So I mostly do online activism through social media platforms, but I was extremely privileged and I felt so honored to be actually invited to 2 panels this year at Pride. I was invited to the Disability and LGBT plus panel. It was a breakout room of the Human Rights Conference. And I was also invited to Let's Talk About ACE, so Let's Talk About Asexuality, which was held in that same red tent, the comp space. That was my role to play at Europe Pride, but I'm also the founder and current president of the autistic student community. The idea behind it is that we have this sort of group that autistic students can go to at university to talk about access needs, to talk about events. So we have a sense of community as well. We can host events and workshops. It's still in its infancy, but I hope it blooms into something useful for students, because I know, unfortunately, from talking to other autistic people here in Malta, a lot of people are barred out from the university experience due to lack of access or not knowing about what access arrangements they can actually get as well. We wanted to not only be a voice, but also to empower the autistic students here in Malta.
Finally, some summarizing words from Lyric.
Pride is this large celebration of diversity, right? And there's no right or wrong way to be queer. It's important to embrace the intersectionality, because us as human beings, we're so much more complicated than only being one thing, one identity, right? We are this constantly evolving constellation of different things, and that's beautiful. We should learn to embrace that. So with Pride, we should be trying to include as many groups as possible. So accessibility at Pride, very, very important for the community.
If you enjoyed watching that video, please like, comment, subscribe and share the video. I really appreciate you showing your love in that way. If you also want to support the channel financially, that's possible via Patreon, but really no pressure. See you next time!